folk of Alexander, and some of Hercules, of Hector and Lysander, and such great names as these. But of all...
Hello and welcome to this Battle Mech lecture. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at what the Inner Sphere called the Behemoth for a little while, and now commonly as the Stone Rhino, which was its original name when it was incepted by Clan Smoke Jaguar. I'm having a few issues on this particular slide thanks to my old Comstar system here that I'm using to write and get this presentation going. Don't worry about it. The rest of the presentation is more or less Comstar free. You shouldn't have any major issues here. When the clans originally decided to have a little fishing expedition in the Inner Sphere, each of them brought a good amount of mechs, but some of them were more iconic than other. Basically, the Kit Fox, the Timberwolf, the Summoner, I would think are three of the most iconic mechs of that period, with the Timberwolf and the Summoner probably being at the top there, especially since they were featured in that rather terrible TV series that came out in the late 31st century. But one of the things that kind of surprised some of the Inner Sphere commanders was the appearance of what was to be named the Behemoth for a while, which was a non-omni mech fielded by Clan Smoke Jaguar in small amounts. They were never the thing that were at the front of the front line or in any weird positions where they were going to be used as a battering ram, even though that's what the mech is basically meant to be used as. It is just one of those odd things that a few commanders saw, and then a few commanders died to the hands of, because the Stone Rhino is actually quite competent in the hands of a competent pilot once again. Honestly, the Behemoth at 100 tons, it is a behemoth, literally. That's why it was called that by the Inner Sphere commanders who saw it at first. It's equipped properly to fulfill its role as an assault support mech for various stars. It's not meant as a brawler, it's not meant as a frontline combat unit. It is meant to be kept in the back and support other units with its arsenal of weapons. So we're going to start from the start, obviously, and discuss where the Stone Rhino is coming from. Originally, the Stone Rhino was designed as one of those Wunderwaffe from the Amaris regime by Amaris' own cousin, Rifkin Amaris, at the tail end of the great cleanup operation of the late 2700s. Basically, Stefan tasked his cousin to make a mech to end all mechs, which he basically took as make something crazy even for the Amaris regime, which did plenty of crazy things, including a sun laser and nuking entire planets just because the SLDF was moving onto them before the Succession Wars, because then it became a common occurrence. While the end of the Amaris regime saw some decent idea in those Wunderwaffe idea range here, like the Rifleman 3 with its 4 Gauss rifle, which we will come back to later, and Screamer Lamb mech. I mean, those were all attempts at trying to do something fancy by a dying regime. The end result of Rifkin's concept was a little bit less successful. It saw the introduction of the Mechwarrior, which was the original super heavy mech before super heavy mechs were even a thing. At 110 tons, it falls into that category here, but it's absolutely not functional, which is something the modern tripods have, and some of the modern odd super heavy mechs that you might see floating around. It does feature the basis that you will see on future Stone Rhinos: a pair of Gauss rifles, a pair of large pulse laser, an ER laser, a flamer, because it's not an Amaris war machine unless it can commit war crimes. It had a Guardian ECM, which is pretty decent here and makes me think that they probably wanted to stick a chameleon stealth armor system on it on top of everything. And it had a massive top speed of 30 kilometers per hour when it could move, which it generally couldn't. It basically couldn't even stand without any support. The leg actuators were not functional. If you decided to start firing anything, you just topple back, even though Gauss rifles don't really have kick. It made things rather variable here. I mean, at 310 tons, if you had taken the time to actually design the whole system around the added weight here, it's just an extra 10 ton, but it requires the gyro to be completely readjusted and completely different. There's a reason why the Republic of the Sphere has been using tripods to make super heavy mechs. So at the end of the coup and the Civil War, Amaris got aggressively apprehended by the SLDF. Rifkin Amaris decided to try to flee Earth using an assumed name and as much disguise as he could. But the SLDF was keeping an eye for quite a few people at that time, and Rifkin was on the list of major criminals. So he did get arrested before he could reach the jump point, and was sentenced to something like 32 life sentences or something like that. It wasn't going to be pretty, and he unfortunately thripped and unfortunately died in prison. Absolutely not sponsored by anyone. The only thing that makes this a little bit different than many of the war criminals in the Amaris regime was that he was in the possession of those Matar plans. The plans were taken into exile by the SLDF, and a copy of the plan was also kept by Comstar. More on this later. During what the clans generally call the Golden Century, scientists and engineers from Clan Smoke Jaguar saw the Matar plan and said, "On that," and started working on refining the design. They started by making it 10 tons lighter, so it didn't need any fancy actuators or any fancy gyro restructuring. They decided to call the design the Stone Rhino, which was 100% improvement on the Matar, because unlike the Matar, it could actually move. This made things a lot better. Early models and some production models you might fall on still have some kinks that needs to be worked out, because those engineers and those scientists tried their best, but they were maybe not as thorough as they should. The Stone Rhino is still very, very big and very, very cumbersome. You can get that fixed with some streamlining of the actuator and the movement system. You can also fix that by playing around with the electronic warfare equipment in your cockpit. It takes a little while. You need a scientist and an engineer to work together to get that fixed generally. And for leg actuator issues, which generally cause the mech to not be able to accelerate to full speed quickly, you need to modify the leg actuators that are still too close to the original Matar design, which were not the best to start with. So you have a few things to mess around with to get your Stone Rhino to work properly, basically. Once you get that out of the way, though, you have a 100-ton battle mech with a 300 rated power plant, which is perfectly fine. And it's a standard power plant, so it doesn't take any extra room in those side torsos and doesn't increase the risk of your mech blowing up. You get a top speed of 54 kilometers per hour. Like I said, some of the early models or models that have not been toyed around with will have slow acceleration. If you notice that, if you purchased a Stone Rhino on the, let's say, secondary market, bring it to an engineer at a decent facility and they'll be able to fix that for you. You also have a set of jump jets to be able to relocate really quickly, which is a very, very good thing in a mech that size, especially with its intended role as a heavy sniper, basically. You've got a pair of heavy Gauss rifles, well, regular clan Gauss rifles, but they're not the inner sphere ones, on the top. A pair of large pulse lasers and a small pulse lasers to take care of the pesky infantry that might be bugging you. This allows you to have 2 head capping weapons, so you can basically decapitate mechs in a single shot with your Gauss rifles. And those large pulse lasers are extensively accurate and also deal fairly critical damage if you hit the head of an enemy. So like I was saying, this is a very decent sniper mech. Your arm mounts on your Stone Rhino are shock absorbent, so even though there's no hand on them, you can use them as battering rams if someone decides to get too close to you. It's got 18 tons of standard armor, which is pretty great, unless someone decides to primary you, or if your getting to be the target of aerospace assets. But with 2 Gauss rifles and 2 large pulse lasers, if aerospace assets decide to attack you, you might be able to retaliate, and they won't like that. But the greatest thing about the Stone Rhino is that everything that's on there is bottom shelf clan equipment. Yes, it's more expensive if you're in the periphery and some locations in the inner sphere, but nowadays, with how Clan Seafox is going around selling stuff, you can generally get those Gauss rifles, those large pulse laser, that small pulse laser, that engine, which is just a 300 rated engine. It's nothing fancy. You've got a standard chassis, you've got a standard armor, you don't have any fancy electronics. You just get it, you put it together, and you've got a Stone Rhino. So even an half destroyed or a 3/4 destroyed one, if you bring it to the necessary factory, I can probably get it running again. There are variants of the design, obviously, but since it's not an Omni-Mech, those are not variants that you can do on the fly. You're going to have to find a factory to build it, or you're going to have to ask someone to take a lot of time to make it work. So the first people who decided to reinforce their Tuman with this was Clan Goliath's Scorpion, which is one of those clans you don't hear about quite a lot because they're just not in the inner sphere. They're all the way in the periphery, doing their periphery stuff and fighting the other clans. Rather than keeping the Stone Rhino cheap and easy to produce, they went fuck it and decided to stick an Excel engine in it. That makes for a much larger weapon load, but it is much more expensive. What they've done is basically stick heavy lasers all over the arms, an anti-missile system, and anti-infantry pods in the legs. Yes, you double the price tag. Yes, heavy lasers remain inaccurate unless you get the fancy improved versions, which Clan Goliath Scorpion has access to. In the end, you have to remember that this is going to be used to fight rebels in the Hanseatic League and some Clan Darkcast, so this is more than enough as an assault mech. Clan Fire Pony, on their side, decided that the Stone Rhino was a good idea, even though it didn't have treads or an overskirt. This is not a stupid design, it actually works really well. You have the 2 large pulse lasers remaining. They replaced the Gauss rifle by ATM-9 racks, which allow you to shoot at just about any range, which is what you want. And they put some micro laser in the back to, if someone goes behind you, you can pew pew at them. You've got more heat sinks, probably because those ATMs do generate a bit of heat, and you don't have the Gauss rifles who don't generate any heat. It's a very decent design. It does what it's supposed to do and keeps that Stone Rhino flavor. If you can find one, it's not a bad thing to get. Of course, there's other crazy conversion kits for the Stone Rhino, some that are completely dumb and some that are just, what are you doing, guys? You want to use your 100-ton mech in a duel? Well, you go with the Stone Rhino Mark VI, where you have 14 medium pulse lasers. You just put your face down on the controls, you start rolling, and whatever's in front of you will probably die, if it's in range. Since it's not going to be in range most of the time, you might be the one dying first. You want to fight in space? Well, you've got the Mark VII with its 6 ER large lasers because a supernova exists, so you want a Stone Rhino that does the same thing as your supernova? I don't know. You want to shoot straight rather than be able to jump? Well, there's the Mark VIII Stone Rhino for that. You take out the jump jets, you put a targeting computer, here we go. There's also a dumb Solaris Jock version with 2 LB-10X autocannons, 48 short-range missile tubes, and a couple of ER medium lasers. Once again, one of those things where you squeeze the trigger and hope for the best. Then again, if you're in a Solaris arena, probably not the worst design because 48 SRM tubes, that's a lot of little missiles. Now let's talk about some of the evolutions of the design, and we're going to start with how to make something stupid even stupider, thanks to the current Ilkhan, Mr. Alaric Ward. He probably went to Old My Clan IPA and asked for the Crucible to be designed. It's got an XL engine, it's got endo steel, so it is rather expensive, and it's really built as a mobile defensive fortification in the same family as the Annihilator. Even though it's actually more mobile, it's got jump jets, it's not a terrible design. It also is very reminiscent of that Rifleman Mark III that we were talking about earlier, with 4 Gauss rifle and a micro pulse laser to kill infantry. I do believe that is enough. There's also another configuration if you really don't like birds, where you can get 4 heavy assault Gauss 20s instead. It is really up to you. We're also seeing an extensively rare machine that is a result of convergent evolution. Scoville Mechworks, when they were working with the Word of Blake, had the plans of the Matar floating around, and rather than being sensible, they literally went, fuck it, why not? And made the Omega. At 150 ton, it's the step up in the stupid factor. The one thing you need to know, unlike the Matar, this one actually works. It has a top speed of 32 kilometers per hour, but it still uses every single bit of weight-saving technology you have available in order to load 3 Gauss rifles, 2 LB-10X, a C3I computer in order to get targeting information from the scouts ahead. This is truly a monster and not something to be trifled with. I've personally never seen one in action. I've seen parts of one, but never seen the actual machine. The Republic of the Spear played with the concept before deciding to go with tripods for super heavy mechs, and it decided that they wanted to mount heavy DPCs instead of the Gauss rifles because they probably didn't like whoever was going to pilot it. Now let's see where the competition stands. Well, what's in the same class as a Stone Rhino? Well, you're looking for assault Gauss boats, which come in various options, and we are going to start with the most classic one, which was a staple of the SLDF and now a staple of the AFFS, the Nightstar. It's a bit smaller at 95 tons, it's just as fast but doesn't have jump jets. It's armed a little bit differently though. You do have an ERPPC and a pair of medium pulse lasers for when things get dicey up close. So that's overall a very nice design. It has probably the best targeting computer that's stock mounted in a battle mech, but it also costs about double the price to produce compared to the Stone Rhino. In the end, I'd rather have 2 Stone Rhinos than 1 Nightstar for about the same price. Comparative number 2 is the MIC's Grift machine, also known as the Madcat Mark II. It was literally designed in order to make a quick buck off people wanting Timberwolves. It has some advantages over the Stone Rhinos. It has jump jets, it goes around 64 kilometers per hour, so it is faster. It is also more than twice the price of the Stone Rhino at 24 million C-bills, Fox credits, per. You do have the twin Gauss rifles in the arms, 4 ER medium lasers for short-range backup, and a pair of LRM-10s because you need to have that missiles on the top look that the Timberwolf has so people buy the damn thing. Actually, I'm being a bit facetious here. The Madcat Mark II is a good mech in the end, but at its price point, I'd still get the Stone Rhino before I'd get that. On a true inner sphere side of thing, Defiance's flagship item, the Fafnir, fits the bill as a comparative to our Stone Rhino. Base design is 2 heavy Gauss rifles, dude. Those do give more punch than the Clan version. Not a bad thing. And 2 inner sphere ER medium laser and a medium pulse laser as a backup. You get the same thought speed as the Stone Rhino. You do not have the arm modules that you can use to punch people with, but you have an ECM, which is pretty useful if you're dealing with people using C3 computers, which are very common depending on who you're fighting. At 11 million per, it's about the same price range as a Stone Rhino as well, so you can probably get your hands on one if you're friends with the Lyran Alliance, their remnants, or anybody who has access to Defiance Industries factory. Ildco also got commissioned by the SLDF to make the Pillager during the end of the Reunification War. If you're looking at the 3Z series, you're looking at something in the same family as the Stone Rhino. Same speed, it has jump jets, uses the XL engine, so it is a lot easier to blow up if you start getting shot at. But you do get a pair of Gauss rifle, 4 medium lasers, and a large laser for medium range encounters, I guess. And you actually have fists rather than battering rams to punch people with. Not a bad design overall either. Final thoughts here. The Stone Rhino is not the easiest mech to find because they definitely haven't built that many of them, but it's one that you're probably going to enjoy fielding as long as you work the kinks out of it. It's also a simple enough gun platform that you can give to an inexperienced pilot, and it'll have enough survivability to make it through the encounter, while the people in the front do the actual work and he does the sniping. It's one of those mechs that's often maligned by commanders who try to pretend they don't envy everything the clans have. And it's another thing that is often maligned because of its origin, basically. Look past that. Look at what you have access to. And if you're someone working with a factory or a refit location, and you can start modifying your own Stone Rhino to fit your need, there's quite a few things that you can work into it because there is room for you to work with it. So I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day. I thank you very much for listening to me, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.